great crowd, and I understand we have a whole room full, the overflow room downstairs who can hear us, but because of the limit on how many people could be in this room, they can't be here, so when we cheer, we have to cheer really loud so they can hear us. Now, as some of you may have heard, there is still an ongoing Republican nomination battle with a lot of uncertainty over who their nominee will be. I don't know how many of you saw the debate last night. But one thing we know, and that is that whoever the Republicans choose wants to take us back to the failed Bush policies that got us into the worst recession since the Great Depression, and we can't afford that.
Right.
So let's contrast that with President Obama's vision of America's future. The president understands that it's the middle class who's the backbone of this country. Yes. And it's helping to grow the middle class is the key to our future. He's delivered on his promise to bring the troops home from Iraq. And he understands that we can balance religious freedom and ensure that women have access to all of the health care And again last week, President Obama delivered on his promise to cut taxes for the middle class, and he stood firm when the Republicans tried to raise taxes on middle class families. And now let's debate jobs, because we're hearing a lot from people who say they want to talk about how we're going to create jobs in this country. Well, how about the millions of jobs that President Obama saved when he rescued the auto industry? Well, here in New Hampshire, we have over 20,000 jobs that rely on a healthy auto industry, from auto dealerships to small parts manufacturers. And these are good middle-class jobs that pay well. The president saved those jobs.
Right.
We've had 23 straight months of job growth. 3.1 million new jobs have been created. Now, we all know there's still a lot of work to do, but we can't afford to go back to the failed policies of the Bush years, not after we've spent the last 3 years trying to dig us out of the hole and the mess that was created because of those policies. We need President Obama in the White House. supports policies to strengthen the middle class, or someone who wants to continue to lavish tax breaks on the top 1% while the middle class disappears. That's a choice Americans will have to make, and that's why President Obama is going to get reelected. Of course, we're here today to talk about the other reason that the president is going to win in November, and that's because he has such a great vice president in Jeanne Shaheen. Fights harder for the middle class, for working men and women in this country, than the man from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Right. And he might be from Pennsylvania and Delaware, but here in New Hampshire, we consider him one of our own. Yeah. Right. I am so pleased to be able to introduce our great Vice President, Joe Biden. Yeah.
Jeanne, Billy, you are so way up, I tell you. You know why I love Jeanne so much? Her husband always has my back, man. I tell you, when I get in trouble, you think I have my hand with me. Look, I don't have to talk to you, tell you what a great Senator Jeanne is, but I'm going to anyway. The fact of the matter is, folks, you know, there's having served in the Senate longer than I'd like to admit, not because I wasn't proud to serve, but because it reveals my age. I've watched an awful lot of senators come and go. As a matter of fact, Jeanne may remember when I had to make the choice of I got sworn in for the 7th time as vice president because I was elected vice president and, as senator and vice president at the same time, because in Delaware, once you're on the ticket, you can't get off the ticket. Literally, you can't get off the ticket so that there's not at the last minute, the parties don't pull a switch. And so I was on the ballot for both offices at the same time. I got sworn in as a senator for the 7th time because we needed to vote for that period of time for the first couple of weeks before we got sworn in. And I don't know if you remember, the Secretary of the Senate came in and they do what they call, the historian does a history minute. And trying to make me feel good, he said, I know Senator Biden will be leaving us in 3 days to be sworn as Vice President of the United States. I think you all should know that only 13 people in American history have ever served longer than Senator Biden. But it means I saw a lot of senators come and go. A lot of senators come and go, and some great ones. But I want to tell you something. There's few people that come into the Senate for the first time because of the institutional structure of that place. Few people that come in and immediately make a mark. Jeanne was a governor, so she had an awful big head start in knowing what she cared about and how to get things done. But it's amazing. It really is amazing, and it's not hyperbole, how much respect those other 99 members of the Senate have for Jeanne. They have absolute currency that you can have in that place. Respect in your word. People nominate you. And you've got them both, and I want to tell you something. I was so happy I never had to be the other side of an argument with you. Jeanne, thank you so very, very much, folks. And let me also thank, by the way, Roger and Richard, the president and executive vice president of the New Hampshire Institute of Art, for allowing us to things are changing. I've been up here fairly frequently, and the good news for me, and I'm not sure it's good for you, you're going to see an awful lot of me between now and they've been in 46 states and 170 cities. Things are changing. Things are changing. We're in a different place as a party and as an administration today than we were 3 months ago. Part of that is because the difficult decisions we made in the first instance that were viewed as unpopular but necessary, but even unpopular among some of our own folks, are turning out to have been the right decisions to make. And people are beginning to realize it. We are, and I was saying to Jeanne in the back, my guy, who's become my close personal friend, he'd tell you the same thing. Barack Obama, man, he is back in gear. He is ready to go. He never left. He was governing, he's still governing, but he also has his eye on the ball in terms of what needs to be done to make sure that we don't turn this over the next 4 years to the other guys. And ladies and gentlemen, you all know what we inherited when we started this thing. Before I lowered my hand on November 20th, and that magnificent day being sworn in before over 1 million people, we'd already lost that month over 820,000 jobs. It was only January the 20th. We lost 8.4 million jobs before we got the first piece of legislation passed with Jeanne's help. And I mean that literally. It wasn't easy getting those pieces of legislation passed. The stock market had dropped down to 6,500. And you can say, well, we don't care about it. We care about people's 401ks. They were eviscerated as a consequence of that. You found American people, middle-class people, hardworking people lost $16 trillion in wealth in watching their homes, the equity in their homes evaporate and their 401ks disintegrate. And we found ourselves in a position where we were in 2 wars with no way out of either one of them. One where we had 160,000 troops in Iraq, and where we had no political solution in sight. One without any serious, clear notion of what we were doing and what we were about. We had, as Jeanne said, the auto industry was not in terms of going to bankruptcy, it was talking about liquidating. You know, I love these guys saying, well, we always said they went through bankruptcy. No, that's not what they said. They said, let them liquidate. Let them liquidate. Would have been over 1 million jobs all told. But people don't know, I come from Automobile State. Used to be the biggest industry in my state, automobiles, in the UAW. We got wiped out. What it means is for every guy or woman on the line, there's 5 people making parts here in New Hampshire or all across the country. So it means jobs, jobs, jobs beyond the jobs on that line. And our foreign policy is in disarray. We were not respected by our friends, and we were not feared by our enemies. And here we are because of the President's leadership. Look at what we did. As unpopular as it was, we stabilized the banks, preventing a depression from literally occurring. And you think that's an exaggeration or hyperbole. Look at how interconnected the banking system worldwide is, and if we had allowed it to go under. They weren't talking about banking, they were talking about shuttering their doors. Many of them were leveraged 25, 30, 35 to 1. We found ourselves in a position where they got put back on their feet. Now they can have a chance to do something like we did for them. We found, as Jeanne said, 23 months in a row of private sector job employment, close to 3.5 million private sector jobs created. We're in a situation where we saw the stock market is back at 13,000 or thereabouts. People's 401ks are restored, those who are able to hang on and last. We found ourselves in a position all across the board where what we did actually is working. Not enough, but very, very, very significant march on the way to total recovery. There's another thing we inherited. We inherited a middle class that had absolutely been hammered. Absolutely hammered. You guys used to hear me during the campaign beforehand talking about how productivity increased 20% between 2000 and 2007, yet middle class incomes dropped $2,500. First time that's happened. When productivity increased, the people producing that increased productivity, workers, shared in those benefits. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen. The marginalization of the middle class has been going on, but rampantly in the last administration. So we inherited a system We're going to your neighborhoods. Think of what you said if your response would be 3 years ago. If you asked your colleagues, your neighbors, you think your kids are going to do as well as you did? Do you think you could turn to your kids and say, honey, it's going to be okay? You would have gotten 5 out of 8 people saying, no, I don't think so. We're beginning to restore hope. Amen. And we have a long, long